So the pandemic created obviously a challenge because it shut down all content production. So that included live sports. And so with no sports, there was this pent up demand for it when it actually came back. And what you saw was this huge sort of fan engagement, but that fan engagement is really limited because it's really a one-way engagement with limited fans in stands. It makes it hard to actually engage with your favorite players, to engage with your favorite sport, to be at a ball game, to catch a foul ball. And those limitations then sort of reflect back to those more of hardcore, diehard viewers and real fan base versus the casual viewer, because you can't really interact in a casual viewer. And if they're not vested in the game or the outcome, it becomes harder to then keep them aligned and entertained with the property. And we've seen it. We saw when sports came back, there was a huge spike in ratings. And then as it continued on, it sort of drifted downward. And we've seen it this year, even carrying through in the NFL, where they've seen challenges from a viewership standpoint that they haven't seen in the last couple of years.
So, what do you think of the reaction adjustment by the leagues and the athletes? It's been a challenge, of course. How do you sort of evaluate how they've adjusted to this new reality of the pandemic?
I think they've done a good job for the most part. I think, you saw some fatigue from fans when you had all sports on all the time. So in baseball, NBA, NHL, NFL, college football were all going on. They cumulatively got a higher share of viewership, but each one suffered a little bit. And so you do run into this sort of fatigue when it's all sports all the time. And I think that, overall they've done a good job, but I think it's hard, because there is still time. There are only so many hours in a day that people can consume sports content and continue to be interested. I also think they pushed the limit a little bit because they wanted to get all of the games in from a league standpoint, which also made it hard because, again, there was some of this fatigue standpoint. And in a perfect world, I don't know that everybody would have scheduled everything as compactly as they did, even carrying through with the current NFL season.
So, what's your take on creative programming, sponsorships, the different form factors, the opportunities that the networks are making? As you mentioned, ratings are soft in some of the sports. What are some interesting trends in terms of integrated marketing deals? What do marketers want from their investment, and how are the agencies and the networks being creative around that?
I think, we all have been pushing for greater opportunity across the board. So how can we be greater partners? How can we come up with more creative solutions? How can we be more flexible? That becomes really important. And that hasn't changed. It pivoted a little bit with the pandemic where we were being more creative with the assets that we had available to ourselves, or to each other. But that hasn't changed. We're still continuing to do that. I think when you look at integrated partnerships, I think the biggest challenge is really time. And I think the pandemic created the opportunity to pivot and actually compress the timeline to do things in a quicker, faster, more agile fashion, which really benefited all of our clients. And I think that's one of the things that has been great about coming out of the pandemic. It's this renewed spirit of partnership where it's not about saying no, it's about saying yes and. So how do we build something together? And the reality is not every network, not every client will be a great fit, but there are so many that there's always a solution that we can come together to solve all of our problems with.
Now, Gibbs, linear live is still the big gorilla for live sports, of course, but there are a number of platforms, second screens, or altogether different services, AVOD services, where sports distribution programming is changing, just like consumption is changing. Maybe not as much as video on demand, but it's changing. What are the implications for you as a media investor around sort of this multi-screen opportunity?
I think the multi-screen opportunity is great. It allows us to be more precise, set out greater precision targets, allows us to do things that, sports have not been able to do in the last couple of years. So, broadcast is straight what it is. It's broadcast, it's one to many. And the multi-screen approach allows us to be far more targeted and do one-to-one, and really carry that through. So we can look at, specific segments and targets. And, as we get pass back data, we can then refine those targets. So I think it helps us be more precise, create more value for clients, and really look at where there are opportunities to really hone in on our customer base and provide greater value.
Yeah, what are, just going a little bit deeper on that. I know GroupM is a leader in addressability, and you guys are doing quite a lot in that space. What, how do you kind of drill down to get the leagues, to get these to be more targeted, and more addressable for sports fans?
I mean, I think it depends on the league, it depends on the event, and it depends on the channel. You look at something like an ESPN Plus, where they have a lot of different sports, a lot of different content, and then the ability to activate either programmatically using first-party data, et cetera. You can start throwing all of those different things in. I think the challenge for all of us is to get to something at scale. And I certainly don't see a national addressable platform at the moment on Sunday Night NFL. Doesn't mean it won't come down in the future, but it's not something that is fully actionable at this point. It's really about understanding where there is the value proposition and what could actually be done. And if you look at it, years ago, as I date myself, where you used to do cut-ins and copy splits, nobody's doing that anymore, because you can do that on an addressable platform in a far easier way, and more efficiently. I think we need to build a interface and a tool that allows us to then really split delivery. But again, when you're not looking at it on a one-to-one basis, it becomes a lot harder.
Now, I know I'm sure you're been reading and following the demographic changes in sports consumption. And there's a challenge in some of the leagues, maybe not all the leagues, to get younger viewers. And I'm sure that's an expectation by your brands that you guys represent, invest for. If you had some suggestions or advice to the leagues on how to, and to the networks for that matter, how to attract and retain younger viewers, what would that be?
I think, Andy, you hit it right on, in that there is a challenge with getting young viewers to traditional content platforms that we haven't seen in several years. I think that challenge is really underpinning a lot of the growth challenges in terms of linear ratings, as well as other platforms. I think the challenge partially comes down to time. Young people don't want to spend 3-4 hours watching, a baseball game or an NFL game. They want content. They want content quickly. We need to figure out how to adapt different platforms that they're utilizing, whether it is something like TikTok or Snapchat, or even, Twitter for that matter, to really bring content to them on a platform and in a time frame that works. I still think you see a lot of success in something like the NFL's Red Zone, because it's a quick fire, all information. They've eliminated a lot of the sort of slow play that is not interested in from a youth standpoint. I think the other thing that's really important is youth want to interact with their friends at the same time when they are viewing. And I think the pandemic has created some challenges with that as well.